I'm not used to doing these like drive in the car and talk videos, so bear with me. Today, this is going to be a 30,000 mile long-term review of my MK7 GTI. This is also the day that I'm selling it. So your first question is probably, if I like the car, why am I selling it? I really like this car a lot. I think this is one of the best daily drivers on the market. This is certainly my favorite daily driver that I've ever had. But I'm going to go through each part of the car. This is not going to be a super highly produced glamour shot video of a bunch of different things. You can go find out so much information about MK7 GTIs. The video that I would want if I was about to make a purchasing decision is what's the car like to live with for a very long time. We've owned this car since June of 2017, so a little over 3 years. We bought it brand new. We've driven it the entire time, a mixture of daily driving around town stuff and then longer road trips and things. And it has been absolutely fantastic. So I'll start with some of the Volkswagen questions. It's been completely 100% reliable. Absolutely nothing's gone wrong. The gas cap was a little bit sticky, like popping the door open in the winter. So I don't really know if that's a fault of the car or just a design tolerance maybe, or manufacturing tolerance. And Android Auto has had a couple bugs every once in a while, but we switched to better USB-C cables, and we haven't had any issues since, so I don't really think that's any issue with the car. But that's it. That's all that we've had over the course of 3 years, and at this point, almost 31,000 miles on the car. So I go through each part of the car, start with my favorite part, which is the interior. We cross-shopped this with a Porsche Cayenne, a Volvo, a Lexus GX SUV, two different generation GXs, a GX470 and a GX460, the Ford Focus ST, a few others. And I really, really like how grown up the interior is. This feels like this interior easily could have come out of an Audi a couple years ago. Everything in it is logical, laid out. There's a good mix of stuff that's in menus, and you can use the screen to get lots of additional functions. But the most important stuff are big, easy to access, easy to read knobs. So all your HVAC, seat heaters, stuff like that, cruise control. And that makes a really big difference for my enjoyment of the car, is how well the controls are laid out and not bearing a whole bunch of stuff in a video screen menu. The sound system's okay. This does not have the Fender system. This is a Sport with the Performance Pack. So it's base model plus Performance Pack, which in 2017 meant different wheels, which I like a little bit more than the stock Austins. I think these are the Nagaros. It also had 10 more horsepower, limited slip diff, and the lighting package, which is swiveling LED projector headlights, black mirrors, a couple other things. So pretty minor stuff for the most part, but we've really enjoyed it. The Fender audio system does not come on this model. This sound system's fine. I really don't have any complaints, but I've certainly had stock systems that were better than this. But of course, pretty much any modern car is going to have a way better system than anything, that's 10, 15 years old. So perfectly fine sound system, nothing special. Android Auto and Apple CarPlay have been awesome every time we've used them. Zero complaints about them. I am driving on one of my favorite driving roads, so occasionally I might take a break to, drive. Also, I'm getting stuck behind people. The overall look of the interior, also absolutely love that. These plaid seats, this is actually the main reason we got one of the base models, is we really wanted these seats. The overall look of the steering wheel, the gauge cluster, everything, this is a really good looking car on the inside. And 3 years, 30,000 miles later, I am still not tired of it. This is still one of my favorite cockpits to sit in of any car that I've had. I love the look of the cloth on the seats. I am actually not incredibly comfortable in the seats on long trips, which is one of the small reasons why we're selling it. So around town, absolutely wonderful. The bolster in these seats is great, very comfortable, no real complaints around town. On longer trips, the bolsters on the seat bottom dig into my thighs a little bit. I'm also a bigger guy. I'm 6'3", 225 pounds. And, there's a lot of seats that I don't fit in super well, so I don't really hold it against the car. My wife has had zero complaints about the seats, and most people who ride in this think the seats are absolutely wonderful. So the only time I don't like the seats are on 3 or 4 hour trips, and it's mostly just because it's a little bit constricting, and I feel like I need to take more breaks in order to, just stretch and stuff. So not a big deal. I am actually, though, more comfortable in the seat on a long car trip in our ND Miata than I am in this. And that really just comes down to the bolsters, not the overall like comfort of the seats. And certainly this is a much more comfortable vehicle overall to do a road trip in than an ND Miata, especially for someone my size. There is a touch more gloss black. It's not piano gloss black plastic because there is a little bit of a texture to it, but I would have been okay if that was like a matte plastic. I get they wanted to make this look a little more premium compared to the regular Golf and the Passat and everything, but I would have been fine with it. I don't care for gloss black plastic. So for future drive-in talks, is it annoying when I'm talking for a sentence and then I cut and then you can see that the car has moved forward some, or is that not annoying because like we're inside the car so you can't really see the outside jumping back and forth? Let me know. Performance. Okay, so I am blown away with how well this car performs for a sporty economy car that is absolutely bone stock. All we've done to this thing is tint the windows and add some mud flaps, but performance-wise, it's on the stock all seasons, which are not very good tires, and everything else about it is completely stock. I drive it in sport mode all the time, but you know, that's about it. So the engine, the EA 888, I don't know how people pronounce it, but the EA 888 engine is a great engine for power. They're very stout. We've had no problems with this one. It sounds like every direct injected turbo 2-liter 4-cylinder. Like, I don't think it sounds very good, and I've listened to every single exhaust video I can find on YouTube, and I don't think anyone makes an exhaust for this car that actually makes this engine sound good. The Club Sport exhaust that they sell on the Euro Club Sport models, that's the closest I've found, but even that, like, to me, it's just not a good sounding engine. But power-wise, the torque comes on nice and low. It always feels like you have plenty of torque for any passing situation. It has enough power to roast the tires in first, second, and maybe going into third, depending on the situation, like if the road's a little bit wet. So the traction control, kicks in a lot. And it doesn't feel like an old school turbo car. Like, I've also owned a Bug-Eye WRX, and by comparison, there really is no comparison. I'm gonna pull over here and turn around so I can hit the fun road on the way back. But my WRX had very pronounced turbo lag, and this really doesn't. I'm gonna do a little bit of a pull here. So I'm just cruising along, I'm gonna nail it. Traction control. So there's maybe like a half second to 3/4 of a second of a little bit of a lag before the power really hits. But that's when I'm like flooring it. In every other situation, it feels not really that much like a turbo car, except for the fact that it's a small engine and you're getting hit with gobs of torque down low. So in that respect, it's absolutely wonderful. And it gets like almost 40 miles per gallon on the highway and like 28 around town. So what are you going to complain about? As far as handling, it's an electrically assisted rack. I actually really like it. I think it's got loads of steering feel. Maybe not compared to modern performance cars that are really awesome, but like compared to my 2001 MR2 Spider, this has more steering feel. It's not a Miata, but it's one of the best vehicles I've ever owned as far as sporty steering feel. I feel like I can always tell what the car is doing. It's very progressive. Like, I feel like I can push it as hard as I want, and I know when the tires are going to start to break free. Very progressive understeer. Again, this is on the stock all seasons, not any other sportier tires that this may have come with. But yeah, it pushes into very mild understeer, which is what you want. And the back end feels like it stays very planted. I know a bigger anti-roll bar in the back is a popular modification. I don't feel like it really needs it unless you put grippier tires on it. Like, if you're doing more of a performance build and less of just a daily driver that you want to be able to use for 4 seasons, I don't really think you need a thicker bar. Like, it's got a little bit of roll, but to me, it's a little bit like a Miata, where I don't think the goal should be to eliminate roll from the car, because the roll communicates to you about what the chassis is doing. And if you dial that out, then you might get more grip, but it's going to be, I think, a touch less predictable. But again, if you're doing like an autocross build, track build, something like that, this advice doesn't really apply to that. That's a different situation. But for daily driving, I think they nailed the balance. I mean, Volkswagen's engineers, like, there's pretty much nothing about the handling characteristics of this car that I would change. And this is on stock suspension, 0 modifications, and I think they did an absolutely wonderful job. Like, I'm hitting corners in this Not as fast as I do in the M3, for sure, and not as fast as I could do it in the Miata. But I'm hitting them as hard as I would feel comfortable hitting them in pretty much any other car that's not heavily prepped, and you just feel the tires give a little bit, and then it just picks up and keeps going. I can tell exactly how much grip I have. The brakes are incredible when I need to use them. That's another thing the Performance Pack has, is it has the brakes from the Golf R, and really zero complaints about how this thing handles. I think it's one of the best handling cars I've ever owned, no question. The sound actor sound tube's stupid. You can probably hear it right now. If you think you're hearing any engine noise, you're not. You're hearing the sound actor. The suspension does bounce a little more than I'd prefer. I don't have any issues with like how heavy it's sprung, or how stiff it's sprung. But I wouldn't mind having a better set of dampers on here. That's one thing that if I were keeping the car, that'd probably be next on my list, would be upgrade the dampers, just so on trips it's a little bit less jiggly maybe. I mean, it's not bad, but it doesn't feel quite as planted as other cars I've got, even ones with stiffer suspensions. It's not fair to compare it to the M3 suspension. That's a fully adjustable TC Klein, but that set almost full stiff on the M3, and it jiggles less over road imperfections than this one does. Along with that, there is, as the tires wear, there's a fair bit of road noise, but from what I've read online, pretty much everybody who has these tires says the same thing, so I'm pretty sure it's the tires more than it's the car. Wind noise and everything else is very low. Like it feels really, really good, and it's very quiet for the most part. But yeah, as the tires wear, definitely those frequencies have been pretty noticeable. For practicality, me, my wife, our dog, who's a 75-pound pit bull, and all of our stuff for a week vacation to my in-laws' house for Christmas, all the Christmas presents, clothes, cameras, the dog, all of our stuff, everything can fit in this car. This has a ton of room. It's extremely well laid out, and you can completely load it down and it still drives great, and you get great gas mileage. Like, it really can do basically everything that we've thrown at it except be a truck. It can't be a truck, but it can do everything else. So a reasonable question would be, if it's this good at all this stuff, why sell it? Besides the fact that I'm a car enthusiast and I always want to try different cars, which is probably true of most of the people watching this video, here are the reasons why I want to sell this car. So we have a lot of toy cars. We have the RAV4 convertible, which is fairly useless for everything that's not driving on the beach or just puttering around town and looking cool. I have the M3, which is a little bit too hardcore to be a daily driver. It's a great track car, fun at autocross. If COVID lets up and we actually get to do some autocross this year. But it has a gutted interior, it's very loud, has no air conditioning, etc., etc. Land Cruiser is probably my favorite road trip vehicle, actually, more than this because it's so big and comfortable. But I fully acknowledge that 260,000 miles is a high mileage for something you're doing a lot of road trips in. It gets 15 miles per gallon on a good day, and it's just getting kind of old. I want to keep it for a long time, so I don't really want to wear it out on lots of long road trips. And then, 15 miles per gallon. But it holds absolutely everything, and it is a wonderful vehicle. Then we have the ND Miata, which is another fun vehicle. It's more my wife's fun vehicle more than it's mine, but that car also serves no real practical purpose other than for around town. It's our go-to drive around, have fun car. And then it leaves this. And this used to do the same job that a lot of the others do. We bought this before we got the Land Cruiser, before we got the M3, before we got the Miata. This really was our daily driver. It replaced our CX-5, which you can see in some older videos on the channel. And I wanted a practical daily driver that was a lot of fun and wasn't boring like I thought the CX-5 was. And this was perfect at that. But now, we don't really need it to do that. I've got lots of vehicles that are really fun to drive around town, and I like cycling between them so I can have fun driving all of them. And for road trips, I end up picking the Land Cruiser more than this because the Land Cruiser for me is more comfortable and it holds more stuff. So if we're going on a trip where we need to bring a lot of things for some reason, or a lot of people and a medium amount of things or whatever, we'll end up taking the Land Cruiser a lot of the time because this just isn't quite big enough. And then there's the factor of the seats. On a long road trip, I'm just not going to be that comfortable and I'm going to fidget because these seats are a little bit sporty for someone of my size and level of fidgeting. And the Land Cruiser seats really comfortable. They're kind of worn, 260,000 miles, but for a long road trip, like, I will be more comfortable sitting in those seats than I will be in this, even if everything else about the driving experience is way better on this car. So my solution for that is, let's sell this while it's still worth a good amount of money. And then we're going to get a cheaper, like, 4-door big sedan for the times where we want a road trip car that gets better gas mileage and is really comfy, not very sporty, just holds a whole bunch of stuff, whatever. Get an older one that's kind of at the bottom of its depreciation curve, and then just keep that for a long time. And that really will be more of like a tool, a utilitarian vehicle. And this, or not this, but we'll have all the other cars that we'll use for driving around town and having fun, which is the majority of the driving we do. And that gives me the confidence to have more impractical vehicles that don't have warranties and have things that go wrong in them, knowing that when we need to go on a road trip, we have our choice of the Land Cruiser, which overall has been reliable for its mileage, and whatever this sedan is, which I'm going to get something that's reliable. So, I'll have a lot of confidence in not having to have something as new and under warranty as this is. And so that makes me comfortable just go ahead and selling it. And I want to sell it while it's still worth a good amount of money. We bought it for 26.5 roughly, selling it to Carvana for 17.4-ish, which I'm extremely happy with. That offer went up by about $1,000 in the last few months. It's gone up a couple times in the last few weeks because I guess Carvana, well, I don't want to speak too much about it because I don't know exactly how the Carvana side of stuff works, so I don't want to be wrong, but it seems like based on the market, a lot of cars are really flying off the shelves and they are having to do more work and inject more capital to keep their inventory up. So part of it's, I'm kind of being opportunistic, but I think 17.4 is a very fair price for this car. I could get a little bit more private market, but I don't have to deal with private market. I can just sell it to them. They're going to pick it up. For someone like me, the idea that I'm going to sell a car without even needing to wash or vacuum it is kind of crazy. I'm going to wash it. I'm going to a touchless car wash right now, but that I don't need to like detail the car and do the thing I normally do, which is take lots of pictures, tons of descriptions, whatever. Like, I just gave them all the info. They're going to show up, check the car out, sign the title, and we're done. So I'm pretty happy with that. And that also will let us put some extra money in savings. We're not going to spend the full $17,000 on a 4-door sedan. We don't need to do that. I'm happy to save some money on that. And then, so we did the math, and it's cost us about $236 per month since we've owned this. And I'm pretty good with that. I'm normally a buy an old car and keep it for a really long time person. I'm not normally the type of person that buys a new car, keeps it a few years, and then sells it. I realize that's normally bad for depreciation. This has depreciated. But if you view it as how much has it cost us per month to own, it's been very cheap on gas. Between gas and the repairs we've had to do to the Land Cruiser because it's an old vehicle, this has been cheaper to own. And that doesn't mean I don't love the Land Cruiser, I do, and it doesn't mean it's not a reliable old Toyota, because it is, but the reality of an old vehicle, especially something that costs that much when it's new, is it's going to cost a decent amount to fix it when you have to fix it. So this has been incredibly reliable, and I haven't had to do anything to it, and I've been very happy with that. So, I don't know, I'm not totally opposed to buying another new vehicle, but I have no desire to replace this with something equally new. I have no desire to get an economy car. I like interesting cars too much, and what's interesting is a very varied list. I like a lot of different types of things, and I want to experience a bunch of different types of cars, and I think it's just the right time to do it. So, if my experience selling with Carvana ends up being interesting, maybe I'll make a video about it. I hear lots of good things about them online. It's been an easy process so far, so I'm not expecting that to be anything crazy. But, that's about all I got to say. Overall, if you are looking for like one vehicle that does it all and you don't need 4-wheel drive or towing capacity or something like that, I think a MK7 GTI could be a really awesome choice. Obviously, I'd recommend getting one that has not been owned by someone who's like tuned it and modified it a bunch, just because, especially once it's got a tune, you don't know how beat the clutch is or anything like that. Actually, that's one other thing I want to talk about that I don't really like. This manual transmission is fine. I test drove the automatic and the manual, and I actually kind of wish that we had gotten the automatic now that I've had it for a while, partly because driving around town, in traffic and stuff, commuting to work, I would rather have an automatic. And the paddle shifters are really fun. The DSG transmission, like it's a really good paddle shifting transmission, and I think I would be very happy if I was living with that on a day-to-day basis. Second issue is this shifter is a little bit rubbery. It's not bad. Again, nothing wrong with it, but I don't really enjoy shifting it that much, and the clutch pedal doesn't have that much feel. A lot of people remove the clutch delay valve to compensate for that, but I just don't think there's anything special about it, and it's not that much fun to drive compared to other manual transmissions. You know, it's easy to rev match. It's got plenty of torque. It's fun to bang gears every once in a while, but I wouldn't say there's anything special about this. This feels just like you're driving a lot of other cable-operated front-wheel drive manual transmissions. So I wish I'd gotten the automatic, but again, that's a very small thing. I enjoy driving this every time I drive it, and I think for anybody looking for a vehicle that does this kind of thing, you couldn't really do a whole lot better than a Mark 7 GTI, in my opinion. I really like the newer Rabbit editions with that pretty blue color. I like the facelift. This isn't one of those, obviously, but I still think this is a great looking car. I like it better than the Mark 8, and I really have zero complaints about anything that I haven't mentioned already. Like, this is one of the few cars that I feel like is almost no compromises for an all-rounder. And I've read plenty of people's opinions about what they think about the steering feel or the performance or whatever else, and I think a lot of that's just people who, they have one car and they're wanting it to do everything. And the GTI, I don't think, has ever been a great hardcore performance car. It's a hot hatch, and hot hatches are supposed to be practical with enough fun that you don't feel like you need to be driving a sports car all the time and you're not bored. Like, it's a practical daily driver that you can have a lot of fun with, and I think this does an absolutely fantastic job of that. So that's my thoughts. I will happily answer any questions you have in the comments about how, my experience driving it, reliability, whatever else. I hope whoever gets this after me really enjoys it as much as I have. And I can make more of these videos. I realize, looking at the timer on the GoPro, this is a very long one. So if this is too long, I don't have to do other ones that are this long, but I don't know. This is the type of video I'd be looking for if I was trying to buy one. I can't talk to you about how much power it holds or how hard I can chuck it around corners or whatever else. I can talk about, I think my perspective is the grown adult who likes performance cars and has driven enough cars to have a fairly educated opinion on it, but I'm also practical enough to know that this car doesn't need to be everything to everybody, and I'm evaluating it based on what I use it for, not based on its comparisons to Supras or BRZs actually might not be a bad comparison, but as far as practicality, I don't think they really compare. But I think this car is in a pretty crowded segment, but the GTI has always been the best in the segment, and now that the Focus ST, I guess Ford doesn't want to sell them here anymore. There aren't many other cars like this. There's the Hyundai Veloster, which is a good car. Let's see, in America, what else really is there? There's the new, is it a Yaris? Is the Yaris going to be the turbocharged one? Whatever the new Toyota hot hatch that's coming here is, which I'm pretty excited about. And then the Mazda Speed 3 is coming back out, isn't it? Or a Mazda 3 wagon that's a turbo. So that seems close enough that it's worth talking about. But the GTI has been here for a very long time. I think it's been good for a pretty long time. Certainly more reliable than it used to be. And I would happily recommend this to anyone else. So thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. See you on the next project.